And you see your typical diagram there with your wireless clients coming in there and the wired network. What was that?
Oh, I've got a PM license.
Oh, okay. Do we need to let the lab know that?
Fine.
Yeah, almost right. All right, so ICE uses URL redirection for central. When they say central, we're basically doing central web authentication on the ICE server. Okay. We'll also talk about doing it on the local switch, which was local authentication. And then they bring up BYOD, which we'll actually talk about tomorrow, where people can bring their own devices in and get provisioned with certificates, maybe supplicants for 802.1x. So tomorrow we'll have a slideshow on BYOD. And then we want to also do posture checks on the devices that are connecting to the network, just to make sure that everything is up to date and all the patches are installed and there's no malware or things like that. So what you see there traditionally, if you go to Cisco's headquarters, they're very good with their wireless stuff. I travel around the nation to a lot of their headquarters, and so I'm always familiar with their sponsored guest portal, and they'll just create me a username, password, and I'm on what they call the SID they use is Internet. Internally, they use Blizzard, but the external people that show up at Cisco use Internet SSID. And then you just get redirected. You put your username, password in, and you're on the Internet. And so they show us that there. You see a little authentication process. Traditionally, that user on the left there is going to be very limited. He can probably go to ICE and get authenticated or redirected. Once it's approved and on the network, you can always add more privileges right with the change of authorization stuff. But this is just a traditional guest user. We want to allow maybe just to the Internet, and that's it. So the initial authorization assignment here, right out of the gate, is going to be redirect that user to the URL portal. Only web authentication is going to be permitted, and any other traffic would be directed to the PSN web portal after successful appropriate network access is provided. So central, which could be on your wireless LAN control, I'm sorry about that. Local, let's start with local. So local web auth could be on your wireless LAN controller or your switch. And it's going to provide you, authentication is performed closer to the client there, limited third party, gives you the cons of that. And then you have the central, which is pretty much going to be your ICE server. And there's advantages and disadvantages. They show a few cons here, but there's other things too that might pop up here for load balancing your traffic and things like that. If I see a diagram, I'll bring it up. So let's start here with the central web auth, and they're giving us a 1 through 11 step sequence here. So we can manage it all our users. I'm sure this is probably what Cisco's doing. We're going to see the initial packet, and then the MAC authentication bypass request goes up to the ICE, step 3. And then 4, we send back our limited access list and URL to redirect to the user, and we're going to redirect them and only allow them to get to their sometimes DHCP and DNS. I would have to say DNS applies more to the local, so I'll skip that. But it comes back, and then if the user goes to google.com, to bring it to the ICE login page, and then So now, one trick there, sometimes I used to do, and I tried it this morning just for kicks, is you can, a lot of times when you put in google.com, CNN.com, and it's going to drive that redirect, but sometimes it doesn't work. What do you put in? Traditionally, 1.1.1.1 will redirect, because most of these things use 1.1.1.1 in the background. So I tried it today, and it actually came up. Can you try it here, just for kicks?
I was going to say, that's going to be changing because they just sold 1.1.1.1.
Oh, okay.
And they're now using that as its public DNS server.
That's I saw something this morning. So yeah, Hedrick said that did change recently.
Like, there's.
Because I was like, I was trying to force my redirect.
Malware one, yeah.
Yeah. I was trying to force it over there to a hotel.
Like that. And
it came up to a website, which it never usually does.
Yeah.
So somebody's selling something now. It looks like on 1111. Okay. And you give it your, username. Then you get your change of authorization that forces the reauthentication. And at the bottom there, step 11, we get a full access to whatever the access list is defined there, and the guest is now at least probably on the internet, and maybe depending on the access list, can get to other things. So this is central. This is all controlled right from the ICE, and we'll see slides on that. And the sponsor is simply, sometimes you can create a sponsor. We got people on the remotes out there. We got Daryl, we got Rob, we got Rodney. You could be sponsors and create basically usernames and passwords for people, and then they would use those. They call them sponsor portals. It's kind of a simple thing. But you could create them in your ICE and then give people the administrative privileges to be sponsors, and then they could sponsor and create the credentials. And then what you could get to set their ICE authentication policy. Continue after failure. So if there's a failure, it could check another thing, maybe try to get you on the network. What a lot of corporations are doing today, some of them anyway, where they tell maybe Coca-Cola employees come in and try to connect to the Coke network, and if you can't connect to it'll bump you over and at least get them on the internet and bump them over to the guest account, guest wireless system. So you can make failure type of things, backups, and that type of thing, so the person isn't just stuck without any internet. Apply authorization to policy, configure the wire switch for centralized. I went too far. Yeah, so do your wireless LAN controllers and your switches for the central using the ICE policy node, and then configure your access list for centralized web. So a configuration overview there, and then to verify things are working right, you might want to turn on some radius debugging and examine, your syslog messages, state of the network access device and ICE. Try using HTTPS to see if you can connect to things. And what they call the AUP, the acceptable use policy, is usually a first step. Once you get there, they're going to say, do you really want to accept these rules of monitoring or whatever the use policy is. Usually that's a first step because they want to get that box checked that you've read that and what the rules are. And then wait for the guest login successful. You want to think of things like, how long does that guest account live? And passwords, of course, requirements, all those types of things for people. You don't want the guest account to stay active for a year. Sorry about that. I keep clicking the mouse and it keeps moving the slide on me. Sponsor account privileges. You want to get those people you've identified to be sponsors, their privileges, and then provision of guest accounts by the sponsor. So then sponsors can create those guest accounts. Okay. Things to think about: the hotspots, your Starbucks type. Sometimes you can have users self-register themselves. So there's many options here you could do with the ICE, and you might just have users go into a self-registered portal on the ICE, and then sponsored guest access. We kind of talked about all that. So there's our AUP right there in the middle. I promise not to do anything naughty. All right. So we see the user connect to the guest SID, SSID, and then we usually get this kind of right away. And City Coffee. Okay, so then we get a secret code controls access to the guest Wi-Fi. Sometimes they'll either give you a code or sometimes they'll text you something. we'll probably see a number of different ways here. And you put the codes in to actually get on as well. So there's a little hotspot example there. And we see some MAC addresses there. And it looks like we're talking to the ICE here with the fingerprint on it, right? And you are now connected to the internet, so the authorization came back. And then they show us a purge policy over there. So let's purge occurs every 15 days. Let's get rid of all the old information. Last purge not scheduled. So they're showing us something you could do in the ICE here with the purging of data from the user guest accounts. And a little flow chart here for self-registration, right? So you go up, you log in, you get your AUP. Hopefully you haven't reached max devices. You'll get a post-access banner, and then you're on the network. So a little example of self-registered guests with SMS. SMS meaning that we're probably talking about text here to your phone. And you provide some personal information and a phone number maybe, and then you're sort of authenticating up there, and then you'll receive on your phone, looks like a little text message, and you'll put that in, and you'll get a successful connection and a redirect here.
Does ICE provide the SMS stuff, or do you?
I don't think so. So yeah, the question is, does the ICE provide the SMS stuff? I don't think so. I think you need to integrate it with SMS server.
Yeah, I'd have to integrate with somebody else.
Yeah.
They'll try and use SMS, email to SMS.
Yeah, the email, right, you can configure the email to send to the SMS server. Yeah, that's probably what you would do there. I'm not sure if you do that in the lab. Yep. I think you might see it come up here. See here? Yeah, it's actually the next slide. So you see the email verification. You can do email too, but you could probably also email the SMS server, and then that would get your, so you would have to configure the email, all the email information on the ICE server, those types of things, who you're going to send it to, and then they'll get the credentials, and then they log in there. Fairly straightforward. Expiration notifications alert guest users about their accounts can expire. You get these. I get them over at the hotel. They expire me every day, even though I've got the account. They're going to knock me out every day. I got to basically re-authenticate every day. I think it runs about 24 hours or something, and then it knocks me out again. Right in the middle of what I'm doing, it'll knock me right out. And I don't get a message. So I don't get a pre-expiration notification. So that's all about that. And then you can have approvers. You define people and sponsors and approvers, and they can approve the request. So that's a capability here. And define some approvers, and then the request will go to the approver who approves it. And the sponsor collects information from the guest and then delivers credentials to the guest via branded printout email or SMS, or maybe even emailing to SMS. So we have an internal guest services identity. Traditionally, it might be on the local switch. External, would be your traditional external identity sources, your Active Directory, LDAP, that's going to multiple servers to authenticate, Radius, databases, of course the token stuff with the RSA. Of course, SAML pops up again here. That's SAML single sign-on. And I don't think we're going to see SAML talked about too much more, but it'd be nice if they did. Used to authenticate guest users or sponsors in the external. So those, also the sponsors would log in and the external database and get approved or omitted to the guest service thing. And then sponsors create guest accounts, right? And that's it. That's pretty straightforward. Oh yeah, they do bring up a little bit more about SAML. So, what is SAML used for? With four-letter thing, HTTP. based on the more applications, more things are written for HTTP, so we want to just sign on one time and get access to all those HTTP applications. So remember the identity provider. By the way, I think they mentioned, yeah, I was thinking, I'm looking at the screen now, yeah, they mentioned a few, but they don't mention what I would think they would mention there. But they did not. Microsoft ADFS, Active Directory Federated Services, is usually the one that I deal with.
Your Active Directory is the same.
Oh, okay. All right, so I just got a comment. The Azure is basically Microsoft ADFS, but it's just use ADFS on all the corporations when I go there. So we're going to just rename it now to Azure. All right, so that explains that. But that is an identity provider. Ping Federate is an identity provider. Ping One is an identity. Who is that? Just remember the analogy. It's the hotel person that you authenticate to. Once you go up there, you authenticate username, password, or in my case, credit card, driver's license. They're going to give me a token, basically a key, a room key. And when I got this, I can now go in the elevator and use it. I can go to the pool. I can go to the exercise room. In this case, what it's going to do is put the token in your web browser. So your Firefox will get that token. And anywhere you go, that approves that token. Any HTTP site, let me put it that way, and you have the token in your browser, will allow you in without you having to use credentials. I just want to kind of go over that because I know SAML is sort of a new thing and in the single sign-on world, but it's pretty important because more things are on HTTP. This is kind of the direction we're going. And those guys on the right there, they would be you basically think of your hotel person at the desk approving you there and now giving you a token. And now you can go to things. So, and of course that would be cloud. You're usually going to see that associated with a cloud thing, not mandatory, but the Sword SAML, those devices, things on the right there. All right, so they bring that in there. Is SAML probably 2.0? Just so you know, the version is 2.0. Usually it does say V2 there. I haven't heard of anything higher than 2.0 in a while, so it might be higher than that. Okay, that's enough of that. And so we can also do sources here, right? We can say, well, try this source, this identity source. Because maybe the Active Directory you're going to or the database you're trying to get to is down. So we go try another database. That's all we're doing here. We're changing our try internal users, I think we show there, try internal users, guest users, or try basically your identity stores at the bottom on the right. So you can make a sequence of stores, basically ID stores they call them. And if one's down, you can kind of move on to the next one. So the identity source sequences, and you can bring an LDAP there and go to other sources with LDAP. This brings us all down to sponsors, who's just going to bring up the sponsor, and approve. You see your approve accounts there. Manage accounts, create the users, deal out the passwords, the URL redirections. And there's multiple guest portals you can create a night. So what you see is what you get. So yeah, the WI. You can customize it as well if you'd like to. What you see is what you get. And there's your hotspots for your Starbucks. Self-registered portals. So you can create many different portals. And now we're going into enhancements. Refer to the release notes again. So you want to pull up the Cisco Identity Services Engine ICE release notes, especially for 2.4. And when 3.0 comes out, you want to get those release notes so you can see all the new features and things that the ICE is capable of. So it looks like we can do a little guest access here in the lab, and we're still moving on here, though, with some slides and in general settings overview for these guest and the sponsor portals. Set up SMTP, your SMS to send notifications. That almost looks like you could set up SMS on there, right? That statement, that second statement down. I know you can do the mail, right? But I guess maybe you could do the SMS. Configure localizations, time zones, SSDs, and custom fields. Let's see, standard things here. When you're going to purge, we saw a diagram there on the purge when we're going to wipe accounts out. And they're showing us another purge one here. And make sure that people don't, aren't in there for a year. And then there's a custom fields you can set up. If you want the birthdays or other types of things, collect information of the birthdays. Let's see, configure SMT server to deliver the email. Okay. And then the password policy. So, minimum 8 is usually pretty good. One upper, one lower type of thing. What do they have there? Anyway, you'll create that. Don't make it too crazy. It's just a guest account anyway. Sometimes you have, for those of you who have attended the Cisco Live conference, so this year, what would have been the password? Cisco Live 2018. So they've been doing that every year. It was Cisco Live 2013, with a capital C. So they just want the password because there's 20,000 people at the conference, and they don't want people just coming up, walking down the street, like, to connect in and have it open. So they always have a password, and that's what it's always been. Next year, it'll be Cisco Live 2019 and the capital C. So you just get near there, put your Cisco Live password in there, and bingo, you're on their network using their resources. Anyway, just a little joke on that. And the expiration policy. And just more policy for the passwords. I think that's kind of straightforward. So actually, I should have looked at these before I came up because I didn't remember this one, but you do have the gateways you could choose here. Okay, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember that now. You can, the AT&T, T-Mobile, and I don't know if you can probably put your own in if you needed to, right? And set that up there. Yep, you could do that. And Orange. Who is Orange?
They're in the UK.
The UK? In the ring. I don't remember those slides. Some of these I remember, some I don't. So I probably won't forget that one now. So you set up your roles, guest types anyway, or guest roles with contractor, employee, or whatever that might have to use the wireless. So you can set up types of daily social logins, valid for 5 days, others valid for 4 days for a weekly. Another lab you're going to do there, and that's a discovery. And then I think this is the last section of this, I believe, is just about the sponsor. I could actually have groups, not just sponsors, but groups of people that are sponsors. And so they just kind of want us to mention that. And it's kind of straightforward stuff as well. You just create, in this room here, we would have James, and Tyler, right, in the group. They're all together. And then they could be sponsors and deal out, access types and locations. So most of this here, I'm not going to bore you with too much of this. I think you could actually probably just read this. It's just kind of the same settings we just talked about and maybe some little extra things. But, customizing portal themes and what the sponsor portals can do, right? So they just want to show you some of those error messages, notifications, things that, and in a way you can just get in on ICE as well, look at these and kind of look at the ICE settings. And most of it, I think, is just readable stuff. There's one thing, this account management, that should, let me just see something here a minute. Yes, that's tomorrow. So yeah, actually those last few slides there are really just about basically what I would say cosmetic things you just kind of read there. Although you don't have the slides, I know, sorry about that, but this isn't terribly difficult stuff for the portals, the sponsors. So I know you'd probably rather get to the lab. So that leaves us, we will start, I like that you've noticed how we start with the tougher topics in the morning, like today, trust